You are listening to the Novel Writing Podcast, episode 217. I'm your host, Colleen Mitchell. Grab a cup, cozy up, and let's get to writing. Today I'm sharing my experience with dictating most of The Witch Queen of Camelot, my villain backstory, and the sixth book I've written. I first learned about dictation from Seth Ring, a prolific lit RPG and sci-fi fantasy author who has been a guest on episodes 199, 204, and 207. Dictating isn't a new thing for authors, but dictating Seth's way is kind of new now that AI transcription exists. Normally, how authors dictate involves speaking punctuation. That's how most transcription programs work, whether it's Dragon or the built-in voice-to-text functions in your phone and your computer. That need to dictate the punctuation is what puts a lot of authors off of the writing method, and it did for me too, even though I've done it before with voice notes while on walks just to brainstorm. What's different about Seth's method and how he transcribes is that you don't need to say the punctuation at all. His program, Bookscribe, will insert punctuation and character turns mostly in the right places, and even though I have to fix some of it, it's still incredibly faster than straight typing. That being said, dictating is a skill. It's not going to come naturally, and it didn't for me. Seth recommends giving yourself at least 20 solid hours of talking into the microphone to get past the learning curve. And like any skill, the more you do it, the better you get. So even if you put in 20 hours and are only dictating a little faster than you might type the same words, each subsequent hour gives you the opportunity to increase that pace. A rough estimate of my stats right now is that I've dictated approximately 70,000 words across 38-ish hours, which means my average dictation speed hovers right around 1,800 words per hour. That's approximately twice as fast as my typing speed. However, I have noticed that the speed drops when I'm trying to dictate a scene I'm not as confident going into, and it's faster when I know exactly what's going to happen, like it's a movie scene playing out in my head. So basically, the same way you would expect a typed scene to come out faster when you know what's going to happen versus a typed scene coming out slower when you don't. I dictate into Audacity, which is a free audio software which I also use to record these podcasts, and I used my wireless Bose headphones because they didn't pick up ambient background noise. Let's talk about the biggest things I learned from this. Number one, the transcription is not perfect. Though Seth's goal for Bookscribe is to be 100% accurate, it isn't, which I didn't expect it to be perfect, but it's still faster to dictate for an hour, get rid of that dead space, which kind of shrinks the audio length by, for me, at least 50 to 65%, have it transcribed, and then listen to that recording at 1.7x speed to verify that it got everything right. Number two, dictating is something I want to do alone. I will only dictate if my husband is asleep or at work. Even though he says he wouldn't care, it's a really awkward process. So even if he doesn't care, I do. I'll say the wrong words, I will make faces when something comes out sounding weird, and sometimes take a really long pause between sentences. I watched a YouTube video before I started dictating of somebody who actually showed what it looks like to dictate. And it's all the same things. It's the awkward pauses, it's the really weird phrasing, it's the looking at yourself in the camera going like, what did I just say? It's all really awkward. So if you want to dictate, I would recommend starting alone because it does look kind of weird, to other people at least. Number three, though I spent the first 20 hours exclusively dictating, I don't have to give up typing. In fact, there are some scenes and chapters that I need to work out with typing simply because they're not as clear in my head as other scenes. For example, I dictated a 2,100 word scene in about 80 minutes, but then the very next chapter had such a complex beginning, I needed to work it out on the page rather than stumble over speaking it. In my opinion, it's a good idea to maintain both skills, typing and dictating, because then I can adapt to my situations for one versus the other. I'm also still early enough in my dictation process that my brain hasn't fully switched to natural storytelling through speaking versus typing. I wrote 5 books with a keyboard. Writing most of one with my voice doesn't automatically make dictating the stronger skill. Number 4, it's a tool for speeding up, not a magic solution for clean writing, at least not at first. The first half of Witch Queen, almost all dictated, came out bloated and extremely messy. I'm by nature an overwriter, but that ramped up when I spoke everything. When I cleaned up the transcripts, I found I'd inserted fluff, unnecessarily dialogue tags, and plenty of redundant phrases. However, what dictating did was get the story out of my head faster. Even though I had to clean it up, it still took less time than had I typed it all. But like with all skills, the more you do it, the better you get, so I expect to improve over time. Seth has told me his best writing now comes from dictation, but he also has years of it under his belt. And number 5, I need to know my story better before I go into dictating a scene. I am much faster at typing my outline because it's just a list of what happens, not actually fleshing it out or writing the narrative and the dialogue, etc. So for my next project, which yes, I have already started, my plan is to do a detailed scene outline with really fast typing and then use those as scene directions for dictating. And I'm also okay with typing a scene I'm not as confident going into, like I mentioned earlier, or if I don't have time or the space to dictate, then I will be typing. No matter what, any words are better than no words. So the bottom line is that dictating definitely speeds up writing, but not everyone is comfortable with the drawbacks. And I experienced 3 drawbacks I'm going to share. Number 1, my available time to dictate depends on when I have the office to myself. That means I don't have a consistent time every day or week to dictate, which means it's even more important that I keep typing as a fundamental way to write my books. Number 2, if I don't use BookScribe, I hate speaking punctuation, and I also hate dealing with the built-in voice recognition software on my computer. It always times out before I can start talking again, and maybe it's just my machine, but it usually only works once per total computer restart, which, lame. But on the other hand, Google Docs has a built-in voice-to-text function that works better than the native Microsoft one. It just still times out before I want it to and requires spoken punctuation. And number 3, though this isn't so much a drawback as an additional expense, BookScribe does cost money. I pay $20 a month for the benefit of doubling or even tripling my writing speed and not having to speak punctuation. Since my long-term goal is to write more books faster, that $20 a month is worth the cost to me. Now, this isn't an episode trying to convince anyone to use BookScribe, because if you are okay with speaking your punctuation, more power to you. Like I said, it's a skill, and dictating with punctuation is as much a skill you can learn as it is to dictate without. It all comes down to your preferences and whether you can afford a tool which saves you time. But for me, dictating will be a staple of my first drafts going forward. That's it for today's episode. Thanks for joining me, and remember, the first draft is supposed to be garbage. The Novel Writing Podcast is a production of Colleen Mitchell Writes. For more writing resources, including Curios, Tally Inc. author surfaces, and the 60-day novel writing challenge, check out the links in the description.